This fall, we have discussed all steps for the implementation of student learning outcomes as outlined in the Guide to Student Learning Assessment. With today's webinar, we have arrived at the last step, closing of the assessment loop. This is where all efforts of SLO development, instructional design, assessment, data analysis come into fruition. This is the point when departments are ready to request resources necessary for improvement of student attainment of skills and competencies. With the good of the students in mind, we are also going to discuss student services outcomes today. And to start us off, I would like to share with you a recent quote from the American Association of Colleges and Universities, which I think really underscores the importance of our discussion. A great source of distinction among campuses is the articulation of their civic, global, and community commitments. Yet the power of these commitments is often left in mission statements rather than translated into learning outcomes. At a time when colleges and universities have an unprecedented opportunity to support American democracy, campuses need to elevate the explicitness of these outcomes within and across student learning. Welcome to today's Friday SLO.
Amanda Teacher. I'm the faculty coordinator of instructional design and outcomes at Reedley College in the Central Valley of California.
And
Hi,
Tricia?
my name is Tricia Wilging. I am the SLO coordinator at Long Beach City College.
Thank you. And Bethany?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bethany Tasaka. I am math faculty and the curriculum chair and outcomes faculty lead at San Bernardino Valley College in Southern California.
Excellent. Thank you so much again for joining us. And we have a fantastic lineup of presenters this morning. And let's see here. Raga, if you could please go ahead and introduce our team. I apologize, just like I picked on Amanda, you know, you're right there in the middle of my screen here. So if you don't mind, if we could start with you, it would be great.
Thank you so much. So my name is Raga Abdullah, and I'm the chair and professor of computer information systems. I also serve in our assessment committee. I am the co-chair of career and technical education assessment subcommittee. And I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you so much. And your partner, Kanchana Mendez. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Kanchana Mendez. I am also with Raga at Oakton Community College. I am a professor and co-chair of the biology department, and I chair the transfer team in our assessment team at Oakton.
Right on. And let me see here. So I think as far as the lineup is concerned, Tricia, would you please go next?
Yes, thanks so much. And I love that we have taken the opportunity to add services, student services outcomes to our agenda today. But I'm going to leave that for my colleagues because my area of emphasis is primarily student learning outcomes at LBCC. So I'll start with an emphasis on closing the loop, and then of course my wonderful colleagues will pick it up and emphasize that the way that they carry that out, and they'll bring in the student services outcomes, which I think is a very important facet of student learning at our colleges. So with that said, let me go ahead and share my screen.
I just have a couple more presenters, if you don't mind, just 1 second. I just would like to make sure that we acknowledge their presence here. So Dr. Cynthia Gordon is here from Chevalot College.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Cynthia Gordon da Cruz, and I am the faculty coordinator of institutional research here at Chabot Community College. And I think I'm the one that might have snuck service area outcomes into the title for today. My entire presentation is about how we measure, assess, and teach about service area outcomes.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, Bethany, please. Good morning.
You're not alone. I'm also here to talk about, in my college, we call it service area outcomes, but the same idea as student services outcomes. And I'm going to present what I usually present to areas who are kind of writing theirs or reviewing theirs. So you all get to be my service area audience today. So I'll be at the very end though. I'll hold you in suspense.
Welcome. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you again. Well, let's see here. Tricia, you're first on my slides here. Would you mind starting, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much.
So anyway, I'd just like to start with a little bit of background. So as I mentioned, I am the coordinator of student learning outcomes at LBCC, and I started in this role in March of 2020. And so what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about how we introduced a very specific SLO cycle and how we worked within the last 2 years to close the loop on assessment for course, program, and institutional student learning outcomes. And then I'd like to show you a little data related to the kind of progress we've made and our hopes and expectations for this year as we are beginning to analyze and act on student learning outcomes data again. So with that said, what does it mean to close the loop? And most of this content is in the SLO guide, and I'm sure Yarek will happily drop that into the chat for us. But really what it means to close the loop is that after we analyze our student learning outcomes data, we have to take action to leverage strengths and address weaknesses in student learning. And at LBCC, and probably for those of us who have ACCJC as our accreditors, we know that we also have to take action to close equity gaps in student learning. And so as far as closing the loop is concerned, in some cases, we have to request resources in order to help our departments to take the necessary actions. But it's not always resource-based. Oftentimes, the actions that we take are related to curriculum and pedagogy, and that is a very crucial and important factor as well. And at LBCC, taking action and reporting on progress related to actions have become integral to our processes. So I'd like to share a little bit about that with you today. And then upon closing the loop by taking action, the assessment cycle begins again. So we know that our work with student learning is cyclical and continuous, right? We're always striving to make continuous improvement. And so on the one hand, we begin the loop, and on the other hand, we close the loop, and then we begin again. And I think that that's an important thing to remember, that we're just always working toward that continuous improvement. So at LBCC, our cycles are as follows. We assess in 1 year, and we really focused on assessment, the assessment piece, and building robust assessments. And then in the second year, or occasionally in the third year, in the case of our non-CTE SLO cycle, we continue to assess. We never stop assessing, but we really focus our work in our second year of the cycle on analysis and action. And so we felt like, so before I took on the role as coordinator, we had some staggered cycles, and we were trying to do things in a variety of ways to make the workload a little bit more manageable. But the longer we worked with it, the more confused faculty became related to where they were in the cycle, and where am I, and what courses am I assessing, and what courses am I analyzing and acting on. And so we just made the decision after I came on board that we were going to simplify our cycle. It maybe isn't always ideal in the sense of workload, but it is ideal in the sense that we have everybody at the campus is clear related to where we are in the cycle, and everybody is doing the same thing. So there's really an institutional focus on assessment 1 year. And in the next year, there really is an institutional focus on analysis and action, while that assessment continues to be ongoing. So related to closing the loop on course SLOs, we have this, what we call analysis and action guide. And I presented this resource last week in a little bit more detail, but I'd like to focus in on part 4, which is the area that really enables us to close the loop. And of course, I can drop these resources into the chat again today before I head out. But at the end of our analysis and action guide, we've asked faculty a number of guiding questions to help them to dig into the visualized data that's available to them through Tableau. And so after they've really looked at participation rate and the difference between course success and student learning achievement, after they've looked at the quiz question level and the rubric category level results, after they've disaggregated for race, ethnicity, gender, modality, they've really dug into and analyzed their data in so many ways. We come to this last section of the analysis and action guide. And so we ask them to be very intentional about choosing 2 to 3 actions that they want to take to improve student learning. And so we let them know that at least one action needs to address the participation rates and overall assessment score in parts 1 and 2 of the guide. And at least one action has to address equity gaps in part 3. Of course, they can determine more than 2 actions to take, but then we also give another qualifier. We want at least 2 of those actions to be tier 1 or tier 2. And so what I mean by that is that we give faculty what we call our list of meaningful actions, which is linked here and also available here and on our website. But we give faculty a list of potential actions that they could take, things that folks have been doing and have found certain success with, research-based practices, practices that have been utilized at City College and have found to be successful. Of course, we let our faculty know this is by no means an exhaustive list. We don't want to cause your focus to be narrow or pigeonhole you into certain actions. But if you're really stuck or you're wondering what kinds of things could I do to address the things that I'm seeing in my data, we want to present some options for them to consider. And maybe this is a launching point for them. Maybe they pick something and they adapt it for their area. Maybe they choose something very specific on this list and really commit to it. But either way, we say that we want them to focus on tier 1 and tier 2. And these tier 1 actions are actions that are integrated into our program plan or that require resources. So this is more institutional, right? There's we need some buy-in from the institution or some commitment. And then tier 2 are related to pedagogy and to curriculum. So these are the things that faculty may work out within their departments. They're having their conversations and they're saying, hey, you know, we realize students are struggling with this element of our portfolio. And so we're going to have a set of themed office hours during these couple of weeks where students are working on this. So rather than coming in and asking random questions or not coming in, we're going to theme out our office hour to really focus on this area of weakness that we found and really invite students and market these office hours so our students can come in. So these are the kinds of things that we're asking folks to do. And of course, tier 3 actions, we don't minimize them. Sometimes we need to create a new SLO because our current SLO language, it doesn't match current research, or we're realizing this isn't really what we want our students to walk away from our course with. Maybe we need to modify it or inactivate it, revise our assessment method. But we're trying to move away at our institution from gratuitous changes to the SLO and to the assessment method. What we really want to encourage our faculty to do is really emphasize what we can do that we have control over to really move the needle with student learning. And so tier 3 is our lower tier, and we consider tier 1 and tier 2 to be equivalent, but we label them as such to put the differentiation between the institutional component versus the curricular and pedagogical component.
Tricia, just 1 second, please. Would you make your display a little bit larger? We really barely see the text.
This is as large as I can make it,
okay.
I think, Yarek. So
okay.
I'm going to, these are open on our SLO website for LBCC, but I will also make sure to get, at the end of this presentation, I will get you the analysis and action guides and the list of meaningful actions across the board so that everybody has access to these resources. We don't want to keep them to ourselves. We're happy to share.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Of course. And so then how do we work out the implementation, right? So that we really actually close the loop. And so we do that in this manner. We have what we call our, this should say CSLO, it says PSLO. We have these are course SLO actions. So we have in our reading and teacher preparation department, for example, after going through the analysis and action guide, we have what we call our SLO workbooks. And our departments, they they keep the record of all of their analysis, their overall assessment, their disaggregated assessment or their disaggregated analysis, and the actions they took. And then they identify what tier that action is, and speak to an implementation plan. So this is the way that we keep records. And then ultimately, of course, these records are input into the software that we use, which is Nuventive Improve. But faculty have a record, a department level record of all of their analysis and all of their actions for every course SLO in their area. And so you might be able to see here, it's a little bit small, but this was the last time we did analysis and action at City College was 2020-21, right? So that was 2 years ago, we were in the analysis and action phase. So this is wonderful, right? Folks have really analyzed, they've really taken the time to determine actions, they've identified the tier, they have an implementation plan, but how do we know that it gets carried out? Well, in the following year, we have in our workbook another page. You can see this year is 2021 and 2022, and we just provide this data back to them. These are the actions you said you would commit to for this year. And so we want to know, what is your progress? What progress have you made? And if you didn't make progress, maybe there's a very valid reason for it, right? Or maybe you changed your mind, and that's totally acceptable. We know that SLO work is exploratory in nature, but it just gives faculty the opportunity to revisit these actions that they said that they would take, and to comment, this is what we've done, it hasn't made a difference, or this is what we've done, it has made a difference, right? And so then the next time they come to analyze and act on the data again, they really have an account of what they've accomplished and where they might want to go next. And so this is our progress. And I'm sorry, it says PSLO workbooks, but it should say CSLO. These are course level actions and course level progress. Okay, so then it's very similar when we come to close the loop with program SLOs. We're still have our analysis and action guide. Again, we have 2 actions. They must be tier 1 or tier 2. One has to address overall assessment results. One has to address equity gaps. And one thing we kind of identify is that collecting more data is not an action, because that really isn't an action that improves student learning. And so, sorry, to skip ahead, we also have a list of meaningful program SLO actions. And again, this is just a launching point. It's not the be all and end all. We definitely want to encourage faculty to think outside the box and to utilize approaches that are very discipline or program specific, those kinds of things. We don't want to limit them, but we want to give them a place to launch from if they need it. And so here are our list of meaningful program SLO actions. Again, they're things that might be worked into the program plan or things that need resources. It might be course-wide professional development. It might be program or department-wide actions, right? There are many types of actions that we can take at the program level that expand beyond the scope of one course level, for example. And so again, with our SLO workbooks, and so I've mixed up my text. You can see these are our PSLO workbooks, right? And so here's our award name. And again, here's the reflection, assessment, analysis, action, and tier identification, right? And so this is our VMA program, and these are their program SLO actions from 2020 and 21. And then in 2021 and 22, these are still their program actions, but these are the actions they've committed to, and this is the progress that they have identified that they've made. And so as you can probably imagine, going forward into 22, 23, which is the year that we are in now, the workbook will look a lot like this again, only it will be blank with their program awards, at their awards and their PSLOs for faculty to analyze and act on again. So they'll have a fresh blank workbook to complete this year. And then when it comes to closing the loop on institutional SLOs, we still have an analysis and action guide, but our institutional SLOs are the analysis and action guides are completed by our assessment of student learning outcomes subcommittee. So now, rather than faculty working at the course level or faculty in the program analyzing and acting, we have a group of faculty, full-time and part-time staff. We have a student on our assessment of student learning outcomes subcommittee, right? And we have, so we have this entire group of folks from every level of the institution that work together to analyze and act on our institutional level outcomes. And then we recommend actions, and these actions then are given to the Committee on Curriculum and Instruction. And we do consider things. How can we implement these improvements across multiple courses? How can we create the buy-in needed to implement these improvements? And so the committee takes this very seriously, and we really do our due diligence in order to come up with our actions and to come up with recommendations for how they can be implemented. And then what we do, rather than creating a workbook, because it's very hard for, at the program level, the program faculty can fill out a workbook, right? But at the institutional level, our ISLO actions really need to be worked into our plans and into the goals of the college. And so our Assessment of Student Learning Outcomes Subcommittee, that's ASLO, we analyze the data and recommend actions to the Committee on Curriculum and Instruction, like I mentioned. The committee votes to accept ASLO's recommended actions. They don't always accept all of the actions that ASLO recommends, but most of the time they do. And then we present the recommended actions to the Board of Trustees. And then in the following academic year, our ASLO subcommittee works with the VP of Academic Affairs and the VP of Student Services to identify overlaps with and to infuse the VP level plans with these recommended actions for improved student learning. And so the result of our inquiry in progress, this is the year before I became SLO coordinator, before we changed our cycle, before we had this kind of closing the loop content built into our workbooks. You can see we made a big jump even with reported results of assessment from 14% to 46%. Closing the loop, we went from 3% campus-wide to 29%. And again, that's still because some of our courses didn't have results of assessment. So it's impossible to close the loop if you don't have results yet, right? PSLOs, closing the loop, we went from 9% to 92%, and ISLOs from 0% to 100%. So we made quite a big jump in the ability to close the loop across the campus just by instituting processes and seeking that progress and that follow-up and follow through. And so anyway, I personally am very much looking forward to where we are this year, where we will land at the end of this year, having gone through our full SLO cycle now for a second time. So we'll have to report back at a later date on these items. But when there is that institutional buy-in, and when there is the follow-up and the follow-through and the support, I think, across the campus for SLO work, you can see that really there is quite a bit of progress. And in addition, because of the way that we've approached it with inquiry, there's a lot less resistance campus-wide to doing this kind of SLO work, and a lot more folks finding that it is meaningful. It's a meaningful process, and the kind of data that they get is instructionally meaningful, and it allows them to take very intentional exploratory actions to try to improve student learning, both overarchingly and to close those equity gaps. And so that's what I have for you today. If there are questions, I'm happy to take them.
Fantastic work, Tricia. This is breathtaking. Lightning speed, and it's just wow, from year to year, so much progress. It's just truly remarkable. Would you comment a little bit about the work that's done within the departments? Like how do faculty make it happen? Sure.
Well, okay, there are a few layers to this. I would say, first of all, we have these guides that are very helpful. The guides really give faculty the way to walk through the data in a way that maybe they wouldn't have known how to approach it otherwise, right? But we also have a department level liaison for every department, which we call these folks our SLO facilitators. And so they often bring the guide to the faculty, help them walk through the Tableau dashboard, give some overview and some instruction. We also present campus-wide workshops, at least 4 workshops for course SLO analysis, 4 workshops for program SLO analysis. And those workshops typically involve myself, our curriculum chair and our director of planning. And so we present these workshops to go over the analysis and action guide, the list of meaningful actions, the Tableau dashboards, and then we also use the end of the workshops to break into breakout rooms to give folks the opportunity to start digging into the data while we as the resources kind of float from room to room to start answering questions. But I think that those workshops, the SLO facilitators, and the resources that are provided are very helpful. And then the second layer, I'd say we really encourage faculty to do this in faculty inquiry groups. And what I mean by that is faculty get together, everybody who, say, for example, teaches Education 20 at my institution, we try to get all of the folks together. Let's look at the one SLO that our students seem to struggle with the most. Let's see if we can identify where those strengths are so that we can leverage, and where those weaknesses are that we need to address. They have a kind of a collaborative inquiry, and then they settle on collective actions that they're willing to take. And so this is big at the course level. Can I say that every course level does this? No, but I can say that many do. And then also we have folks take care of this at the program level too. Many of the faculty who teach together within a program get together to analyze and act on program level data.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just one second. I think I saw a question here.
I answered it in the chat.
Oh, you
But I
did.
thought
You did.
Brandon had his hand up, but I don't see it anymore.
I had a quick question. Thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned the SLO and action items were reviewed and approved by the board, academic affairs, and then student services. Can you talk about what input, to see if there's overlap, particularly with student services and academic affairs? Can you talk about what input, if any, student affairs has, or student services has, with working with the faculty and determining their SLO and or action items? Like, how collaborative of an effort is it between the two departments or divisions?
Well, I would say that okay, so at the course level, we do have some student services areas like library and counseling that have instructional courses. And so those areas carry out the process just like any other area. On the student services side related to institutional SLOs, I can just share that for our ISLOs, for example, we assessed our ISLOs. And then when we went to analyze and act, what we noticed across all 5 institutional student learning outcomes, when we disaggregated by unit completion, we found that our students of color who have only completed 0 to 14 units at the institution struggled the most to meet our ISLOs, which we felt, okay, that's very logical. That makes sense, right? But when it came time to working with the VPs in their planning, we realized, okay, we need a more holistic approach to supporting our students who have completed 0 to 14 units at the institution, right? We need to make sure that we are supporting them from the instructional side and from the service side, so that these students who are maybe struggling to meet the ISLOs from 0 to 14 units continue to learn and to persist. And then also what our data showed is that as students obtain more and more units at the college, those equity gaps are significantly reduced. And so that was the collaborative effort between the VP of Academic Affairs and the VP of Student Services to really make sure that we're building in those supports for those students who have only completed 0 to 14 units at the institution.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tricia. Great work. And again, I'm getting a lot of messages here about the resources, right? So those things are going to be available, so we can.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have right now. All I have is the completed workbooks, which I don't have permission to share out widely, but I will do my best at the end of this presentation. Yarenk, if it's okay, I'll just send you my analysis and action guides, my list of meaningful actions, and then those 2 templates for our course SLO workbooks and our program SLO workbooks, both 2021 and then 21-22, so that folks can see how we build these out. We're happy to share, and we hope that it could be valuable to you all as well.
Absolutely. That would be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tricia. With
Thank
that,
you all very much. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to say, Yarek, I'm sorry, I have to head out. I have a scheduling conflict today, so I can't stay, but I wish you all well, and the next presentations will be wonderful as always.
And Tricia, is it okay if we share your email in the chat in case people had follow-up questions?
Most definitely. I'm happy to take questions and chat further on any of this.
Sounds good. That perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll switch to, thank you, Tricia, to Cynthia Gordon. She also has to leave in what, half an hour, right? And then you may be able to come back for questions. So if you could please, Cynthia, go ahead and move on, and right. And then if you're available, you can join us back at the end of the webinar today. So thank you very much again for joining us. We are switching to student services discussion.
Great, thank you. So can everyone see the PowerPoint? Yes, seeing some nods, awesome. All right, so I'll be talking about assessment and tracking of service area outcomes. It sounds like people sometimes also often refer to these as student services outcomes. At our college, we call them service area outcomes. As always, when I present, I like to just acknowledge that I am part of a team, and the team most definitely helped research service area outcomes and create this presentation. So shout out to all my team members. What I'll do today is I'm going to start out by presenting similarly to the way that I would present if I were doing a service area outcome assessment workshop with service areas on our campus. I'm not going to run through the whole workshop since obviously you all are not trying to create and assess your service area outcomes, but I think it helps to just give context to go through that. Then I'll talk a little bit about our historical system for assessing and tracking on our campus, our current system, and where I'm hoping that we're headed, including going over some of our tracking documents, just sort of to honor the closing the loop focus of this session. All right, so, if you can pretend now that you are a service area on Chabot's campus, I'm going to be speaking to you in that role for the next few slides. It's really important as we try to assess that we have an explicit understanding of what you are assessing. I find often folks in academic areas, when they're assessing their course level or program learning outcomes, a lot of faculty have some training in assessment. That is sometimes true for service areas and sometimes not. So you may be doing kind of a ground level, like how to assess what assessment is kind of workshop as you're talking with folks. I'm from California Community College System, and we do both program and area reviews, which are kind of like yearly program assessments. We're accredited by ACCJC. And if you look up these terms, it's actually really difficult to get just one definition of what is a service area outcome. What is a program learning outcome? What's a student learning outcome? What's a goal? And so I argue that it is very important that we have very clear understandings of what these all these alphabet soups mean before we're going to be able to assess. And we want to be able to use these terms consistently, and then we want them to obviously make sense from an assessment perspective. So today what we're going to focus on, we're not going to do it all, we're just going to focus on defining, assessing, and tracking service area outcomes and distinguishing those from goals. Those are the two terms, at least on our campus, that seem to get flip-flopped. And I noticed as I looked through other community colleges' literature that seem to get flip-flopped in other places as well. So what is a service area outcome? So we integrated a whole bunch, and that's why I had to thank my team. We looked at a lot of different people's websites, and this is what we came up with, that service area outcomes, like program learning outcomes, tend to be enduring and overarching aims for your service or program. They're overall level, program level type outcomes, service area outcomes, and there's more than one type. So here's just a few examples, and I can share the slide. I know it's a lot of text on one slide, but sometimes service area outcomes are like learning outcomes. So for services that are directly serving students, they might be stated kind of like a typical student learning outcome. So students will demonstrate basic knowledge of financial aid principles, rules, and regulations. For service areas that serve Chabot employees, you could have a service area outcome that's kind of like a student learning outcome, except it's stated from the employee perspective. And I give an example of that one. Service area outcomes could also be about measuring a quality of a key function, service, or process. So for example, campus employees will receive mail in a timely and accurate manner. And then finally, service area outcomes could be something about promoting a campus-wide function or enhancing the achievement of the college mission. So example from our office could be that the Office of Institutional Research will provide the Chabot community with data to promote inclusive excellence in support of equity. So again, you can see that's high level. It's unlikely to change much year over year. That's sort of our big overarching aim, or one of them, of our office. So when we do our program reviews on campus, they often require both reporting on service area outcomes and goals. But wait, I'm confused. What's the difference again? So again, the SAOs are the enduring and overarching aims, and they're unlikely to change much. And PAR goals, so PAR is our acronym for program and area review, kind of like program evaluation, happens on more of a yearly basis. Maybe a comprehensive review at our college in 1 year, and then 2 annual update years, and then another comprehensive review. So if you're making a goal based on your service area outcome in your assessment, that's going to be more specific. It's going to be a shorter term outcome. It's often related to a profit, process, or a service. And it often has a concrete action plan that is going to be part of reaching your overarching and enduring SAO. So that still feels a little theoretical, so I give people a very concrete example. Learning connection here on our campus, students from diverse backgrounds with diverse learning needs will receive tutoring that improves their abilities to complete assessments, study, and or succeed in their courses. So that's, you can tell that's enduring. That's probably not going to change much year over year. That is going to be your service area outcome this year and very likely 3 years from now. But maybe you have a goal based on doing some assessment and collecting some data that you want to refine your student diversity and anti-racist tutoring practices training for incoming tutors. You can see hopefully how that goal directly relates to helping you achieve your service area outcome. That goal, as you may notice, it's very specific. It's expected to be completed over the PAR cycle, so a time specific, and it is directly related to and supports that SAO. So I spend a lot of time and I give a few examples, and then I ask people if they have questions about, what's the difference again between a service area outcome and a goal. And then I just go through a few more examples. So I have tons of examples on slides, so I can share these with you, but I'll just read out a few more. So campus safety might have a service area outcome like students, staff, and community will report that they feel safe while on campus as a result of campus safety practices and policies. So if they assessed that and found that there was something specific in which students didn't feel safe, maybe they would have a goal in order to increase better outcomes on their service area outcome. So again, just more examples. I won't go over all of those. But then back in pretending you're still at Chabot College in a service area, I would have service areas go ahead and look up their current SAOs. So in our campus, every service area in the bottom left-hand corner of their tab, and I can show you all where they're located if that's interesting, you can click on the SAO and it has a link to every service area on campus and every single service area outcomes. Every service area on our campus is required to have at least 2, some have more. So there's one spreadsheet that houses all of that information, so it's easy to find and track. And so I have folks break out, they look at their own SAOs in their own service team. They think, is this what we want to do? Is this overarching? Is it enduring? Is this really the mission of our service area? We're not going to actually, do this here today, but I'll have them enter that information in an interactive spreadsheet during the workshop so that myself and some of the institutional research team members can be looking, and then we can be commenting on people's service area outcomes in real time during the workshop. And then I move to, so once they've got their service areas and outcomes and everyone agrees like, yes, this is what we want to do, sort of moving into assessment and talking about assessment. I stole this quote from Daniel Martinez. I don't know if he happens to be here today, but someone in our community often emails out over the listserv, and I just love this. Assessment means you start collecting something, you put the results to work, and you improve on what you did next time. I just try to make it really assessment really accessible, because I think it can be very overwhelming, particularly if that's not what you do every day. So I talk with folks about why we assess, how it can be helpful to administrators, faculty, and classified professionals in determining what's working and what's not. It can facilitate valuable interdisciplinary and intercampus discussions, and can also provide evidence to justify your needed resources when you're filling out your program and area reviews, which is again sort of our program evaluation and then budgeting for the upcoming years. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break. Now I'm going to and ask you all. So I do present this slide to them as well, but I'd love it if you could pull up your chat. And I'm curious, and the answer can be no one, but who is responsible for service area outcome assessment on your campus? And if you could put in the chat your college's name, if you're okay with it, and then like the title of the person and or the name of the committee that is responsible for supporting, monitoring the assessment of service area outcomes on your campus. Let's see if I'm clever enough to see the chat while presenting. All right, so I stuck my question in there. All right, so I see service areas are each responsible for their own. It's decentralized, individual departments, folks trying to get it started. Vice President of Student Affairs. I often work with our Vice President of Student Affairs on this. You actually have a Student Affairs Coordinator who does this. Office of Institutional Effectiveness. So a broad range, interesting. I may ask you for the chat after, Yatik, if I can, I'm curious. All right, so I asked this question during the workshop and I actually put up a poll and I say, all right, who's responsible for SAO assessment? Answer A, anyone who wants to do it should do it, but if you don't want to, that's okay. SAO sounds like it has something to do with data. Office of Institutional Research should assess every single SAO on campus. And option C, every service area on campus is responsible to assess at least 2 of their own SAOs every 5 years. The Outcomes and Assessment Committee and the Office of Institutional Research are available to provide support. I'm guessing folks here in our meeting can probably guess which is the correct answer. But you know, not everybody answers C and when I do this poll. So I let them know, you know, A is incorrect. Assessing service area outcomes is actually one of the requirements for a CCJC or accrediting institution. But more importantly, it helps us do all we can to support student learning in the college. I remind folks, hey, it'd be impossible, like just literally impossible for institutional research to assess every single one on campus. And also that they are in the best area of expertise to assess their SAOs. If you've got somebody coming in from the outside trying to assess you without really understanding what you do and what your mission is and how you're doing it, you're gonna have a less impactful assessment. So we're here to help and support, but they are the ones that are responsible for spearheading that assessment. Then I, validate, hey, but maybe you haven't done this before. What if you don't know how? That's okay. And so in the interactive assessment workshop, I go over some basic ways of performing assessment. I have the groups break out by service area. We share some good examples. Since you all are not doing that, we're not going to do that yet. I'm going to shift the focus and go over to how we actually then track that on our campus. So at Chabot, historically, service area outcomes were assessed through our program and area review process. So the program evaluation and then budgeting for the upcoming years. Some of the pros of that, we actually had a Chabot specific electronic app. It was developed through a grant and folks really liked it. They were able to enter their data, collaboratively work with others. And it was part of a process they were already taking part in, right? So everybody does program and area review on our campus. It's a requirement. And so putting service area outcomes assessment, integrating it with that, we were able to get people to respond. The cons was that it was difficult to systematically track. So while the electronic app was awesome, downloading data from it can be a bit challenging for some of the individual questions. So that was definitely something we needed to fix if we were going to have systematic tracking. So in fall 2021, we assessed SAOs again through program and area review, but we used a new application. We used Qualtrics for our program and area review, and it was much easier to download the data for systematic tracking. So after we completed our program and area review, we put up all sorts of reports on the data campus-wide, and we put up a report on the SAO assessments that came from PAR. I know this is tiny. I can, the link is in the PowerPoint, but essentially we're able to create an Excel spreadsheet that allows people to, talk about who they are, describe their SAO, let us know when it was last assessed, type of assessment, and share their results. But in looking at that, what we noticed was that there were, in part, I think, thanks to our new SAO workshop, a lot of SAOs were listed as newly created, so they hadn't been assessed yet. You know, they created them as their teams. They talked about assessment in a workshop in fall, then their program and area reviews were due a month later. So when it came time to fill it out, all they could do was say, well, we created the SAO, but we haven't assessed it yet. And we, you know, we're in our accreditation year right now, and we just wanted to provide more support and have higher numbers of service area outcomes that had completed their assessments. So we did an additional update. So in addition to our program and area review, I just created similar questions, another Qualtrics survey, working with our vice president of student services, who encouraged service areas to participate, would go to their meetings, explain how to do it, send out the link, talk one-on-one, and they did their assessments in Qualtrics over the course of the year. So then we were able to create an assessment update tracking document. And when I changed the question, what I noticed, especially in the presentation before, was this idea of closing the loop. I felt like simply asking about the results of the last assessment. Someone for me from institutional research, to me, that includes, of course, the actions that you're going to take. But that was not clear enough for folks filling out the assessment. So we added an additional question that just said, you know, what are you going to start doing, stop doing, or continue doing based on the results of your assessment, and to come up with kind of a continuous improvement plan. So we added an additional column to our tracking spreadsheet. So now it includes not only the description of the data, the assessment, and the method and the results, but also what their continuous improvement plan is based on that assessment. The future, where we're headed. So as great as Qualtrics is, it's a significant improvement for downloading and visualizing and looking at data. It's still not perfect. There's a lot of manual labor that went into creating these Excel spreadsheet reports. So our campus recently adopted Curricunet Meta. That's what the curriculum committee is using, and it's what our outcomes and assessment committee is using for course level and program level learning outcomes. So I'm going to be working with them on creating pages in Meta that also are for assessing service area outcomes. So we'll be shifting over to using Meta, not only for course and program level outcomes, but also student services, service area outcomes. And my hope is that working with Meta representatives, we'll be able to get some automated reporting that look pretty similar to the Excel spreadsheets I created. I don't know if that's a dream. We'll see. I can maybe come back next fall and let you know how that worked out. So we will continue to check on the progress of SAO assessments in our program and area review, but the mechanism for assessing, collecting the data is going to be through Meta, and that'll be supported by our outcomes and assessment committee. So it's really kind of a combination of the program and area review committee that asks annually about how things are going, but the day-to-day assessment leadership is monitored by the outcomes and assessment committee on campus. And that's it on my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Excellent work. Gosh, this is just so much information. Again, questions about the resources, you know, the sharing, that's always seems to be in high demand. So thank you again. And if you could come back for before we end today, would be great to hear from you in case there's questions. I would like to go ahead and switch to Bethany Tasaka. If you could please start with your presentation, and then we'll probably conclude the student services part of today's webinar.
Sure, no problem. Hopefully everyone can see my slides. We'll get in presentation mode here. There we go. All right, so I think it's funny, we had similar thought processes in putting together our service area outcomes kind of presentation. In my campus, I'm from San Bernardino Valley College in Southern California. We actually also call them service area outcomes. So sometimes I have to adjust my phrasing from service area to student services outcomes, but they're meant to encompass both. And the way my campus actually currently operates, we also have a few outcomes that live in what we call the administrative services areas as well. So facilities, there's one that exists for the switchboard and for the mailbox room. And I absolutely acknowledge that they're a bit dated, but you know, we pick our battles to work on one area at a time, right? So this actually encompasses not just the student services area, but some of those other areas on campus that also focus, just on what the campus does and how we operate. So a little bit of background and kind of how we approach this is what our campus is doing right now is we say anyone who goes through the program review process should have outcomes. If you're an area that is instructional, that means you have student learning outcomes. And if you have degrees, it's program learning outcomes, right? But just about everybody else has these service area outcomes. And then all of those kind of feed into the larger institutional learning outcome, kind of bigger umbrella. And that kind of makes them feel a little bit vague, to be honest. I remember when I stepped into this role, student learning outcomes made a lot more sense to me because I come from instruction and math faculty. That's my first job. So that made a lot more sense to me. And program learning outcomes, those weren't a huge stretch either. But then they went, you're also going to be overseeing, how service area outcomes look on campus. And I went, what are you talking about? What does that mean? I don't know what to do with that. And so I feel like I had to do a lot of understanding on my own side, kind of a lot of educating on my own side of even just, how does the other side of the house, so to speak, how do they operate? What's important to them? What do they need to know? And in full transparency, when I came on, this was an area of recommendation from our accrediting body, ACCJC. We weren't quite in trouble with them yet, but it was one of those borderline, you need to get this fixed, kind of area. So it was in need of help. So my approach, and this is kind of how I'll walk us through this is actually what I present to areas on my campus who are looking to review their service area outcomes or their SAOs. I do feel it's a little bit of a slower process overall, at least for us, than the learning side. Those are a little bit easier to get people on board. And so some of the approach I have on this one is I just want to get people excited about doing it. I want them to want to do it because that can be a challenge. So when I start, I just ask, what, as we start this presentation, take a moment, talk to the person next to you. If we're on Zoom, I don't know, send a message to your friend in the chat, but sit and really think for a moment. And I give them a few moments to think, what makes your program special? We have tons of programs on all of our campuses, right? There's ones that we have in common, probably, EOPS, financial aid, student life, but there might be ones that are very specialized or very unique to your campus. It would be hard to make a solid list that fits everybody, right? So in sitting with an area, it's really just starting off with what's unique about you? What do you offer to students that absolutely nobody else can do? And that doesn't have to be the only area they focus on, but what is it that when students walk away from your office, area, lab, whatever that space looks like, what do they need from you? And what are the things that are unique to you that would be important to really highlight? And so I give them a moment to write something down. We all have the good students and the less good students who actually do it and write something down, and the other ones who are like, I'll remember it for later, right? But really just wanting them to start with, we all have these unique things that happen in our areas, and that's really why our areas are separate, right? There would not be a need for both, the Puente program and the Emoja program if they weren't serving diverse needs or unique needs. So really wanting to highlight that. What's important about what you do? So then we say, okay, a great place to start is, what are these SAOs? What are these things that we're trying to get you to create and then assess and evaluate in this whole, assessment language that we like to throw out there? And just saying, these are special to what happens in your program. What they're supposed to do is when a student comes into your office, when they join, your EOPS office or workshop that you're holding, it's giving a student idea of what they're going to walk away with. Oh, I'm going to know how to, fill out a FAFSA form. I'm going to know about, there was a workshop that we did on voting, right? Oh, I'm going to understand the voting process better. And they don't always have to be super unique like that, but it's when they walk away from whatever experience they have with you, what are you wanting them to walk away with? And then remembering that they're part of the bigger institution. We always want to tie it back into, the institutional learning outcomes. And just reminding our colleagues in the service area outcomes, areas, these are very different from our instructional outcomes and the instructional counterparts that they have on campus, right? I think it's a little easier to define what's happening in a classroom, right? The times that we have with students are very fixed. It's a very controlled environment. There's a start time and end time. You're doing exactly this task today. But that's not the case for a lot of these areas, right? Students will come and go. They're open all day long, and students could pop in at any time when they're open. Even with like a registration period where you might have a busier time, it's still not as predictable, right? And your environment is just very different. So it's really hard, I think, for some areas, especially if you have like a new director or someone stepping into this that's just not familiar with this at all, to go, what is this and how am I, what do you want me to write? I don't understand. And so getting them to see, we really want them to highlight their programs and thinking about the need that you're filling for our campus or for our community. What are you doing there? So then again, presenting it to my colleagues, right? I always get, I wrote these already, right? They exist. Somebody wrote them 15 years ago or whatever. I don't want to do this today. I say, you have to pay attention, I promise. I love this picture when I found it in the bottom. We all know that person on our campus, right? So reminding ourselves, please don't tune out. This is still relevant to you. This is still something that we can talk about, even if your area already has this and you feel like it's down perfectly. The whole point of outcomes is to create a cycle where we're constantly assessing and then reassessing what our practices are. So even if you have your SAOs written, you want to stop and ask yourself, is there room for improvement? And the answer should be yes. If it's a no, that's a different conversation for a different day. But programs change as well, right? And needs change. I mean, think about, I know we all point to the pandemic, right? But it's a very real example of what COVID did to us. It changed the way that we presented our services to our students, right? Whether you're in the instruction areas or the non-instructional areas or the student services, or, go down the list, right? So another thing that you could throw out there is, another question might be, well, what if I'm not the person in charge, right? This isn't my game. It's not something I need to worry about. And then my response to that is, this is a team effort. None of these outcomes should ever be written by one person, assessed by one person, evaluated by one person. You need as many eyes on this as possible, and you want as much buy-in as possible. So these should be talked about. Your SAOs should be discussed in department meetings, division meetings, whatever that category looks like for you. Put them on the agenda once a semester. Ask ourselves, right? Is this still a good fit? Did our program change significantly enough where this is not valid anymore? Or is it still good and are we going to keep it? Do we need to add or subtract one? Do we need to change our assessment methods? All of those are really important questions to ask on a regular basis. And so that's part of that evaluation. And it's part of why you can't just check out and, zone out for our meeting, right? We still need you here. So then I focus in on what's the benefit, right? Because that's why a lot of people, the buy-in piece, they want to know, how's this going to help me? We have a long to-do list. I'm sure it grows all the time. There's all these things that we have to do. Why do I have to do this extra thing? So the easiest incentive for me is program review. Again, for my campus, if you go through program review, you have to have outcomes. So those are tied together. Again, is that practice going to last forever? I don't know. It's something we'll revisit and reassess in the near future. But at this point in time, that's the way it is. So program review is a great incentive, showing, look, we have these outcomes that we wrote, we review them regularly, we assess them on this cycle, and we have a plan, right? It answers some of those questions of, is what we're doing effective? And to be perfectly honest, a question like, is your program effective? What could improve? Those are actually independent of program review. They happen to live on a lot of those documents, but those are questions we should be asking ourselves regardless, right? It's the same thing if you put it in the instructional side. Faculty who are in the classroom should also be asking themselves, is what I'm teaching or my instructional methods, are they effective? Are students learning what I want them to learn? So it's kind of with that same lens. And we also, you know, are you doing whatever it is your program says it's supposed to be doing? And how do you know, right? If you say your job in, you know, admissions is to make, you know, streamline the enrollment process, how do you know if that's happening or not? You got to have something to back it up. Otherwise, it's just a statement. It doesn't really mean anything. And again, are students walking out of your spaces understanding what it is you have to offer them? And then tied to that, are your data collection processes any good? Is the way that you're collecting information valuable, and is it effective, right? And then, you know, are you tied to the mission of the college? You could add the institutional learning outcomes here, but is what you're doing a piece in the puzzle of, you know, the larger picture of what we do? I bring up the assessment cycle and just say this is how assessment operates. And one push that I've had at my institution, it feels really small, but I think it's been meaningful, is to take out specific outcomes. So this used to say establish SLOs, assess SLOs, analyze SLOs, the student learning outcomes, right? My slight shift was, no, let's just say outcomes, because this applies to everyone. And when we make it more of that blanket statement, there's less of a, well, I'm instruction and you're student services and we do it this way and you do it that way. This loop works for everyone on my campus. So let's make it representative of everyone on campus. And it might be different for you on your campus, but that's kind of, that's worked for us. So that slight language change has made it a little more inclusive. There's a little more buy-in, you know, it's one more step towards, this is what we all need to be doing. And I'm sure you all have seen this loop several times. Trisha talked about closing the loop earlier on, so I won't, you know, beat a dead horse or anything like that. But I do go over some general housekeeping things with them, but I'm gonna be really honest, this is not as much of a focus. The focus of a presentation like this, for me at least, is to really get them excited about the process. This to me is, you know, it's less exciting, right? Here's our SAO webpage. Here's the master list where we have everyone there. And again, in full transparency, it's not a perfect master list. I have a few areas who have not been responsive to me, who have not really updated their SAOs in a while. I'm a little excited to say that their program review cycle is coming around, so hopefully that'll get fixed soon. But again, it all comes in time. We have an SAO rubric. It's very similar to the other outcomes, the student learning outcomes and program learning outcomes rubric. Again, all of these things probably could use more work. They're not necessarily perfect as is, but we'll get there. Where we currently are as a campus is we have this evaluation form. If I'm being really honest, I don't like it. It predates me, and we are trying really hard right now. We're kind of in the middle of this. We're trying really hard to move to CurriculNet Meta. So I think someone ahead of me, I think this person right ahead of me, said they also recently moved to CurriculNet Meta. And so we are working really hard to make this a digital submission process. It's currently a Word document. You go in and you type a bunch of things. Probably process is not dramatically different, but information storage is very different. So wanting to get everything on Meta, it's a really easy, you know, things are kind of pre-populated. That's what we're working on creating right now. And then right now, again, I house these forms, put them on the website when I get them, but also their manager houses their forms because I am not their supervisor. And we recommend that areas put these on their website and make them, you know, transparent and, hey, this is where we are with our service area outcomes. But that's kind of where we are. And then we ask, you know, if you're not sure where to start with these, we had those guiding questions at the very beginning, but if you have no idea where to start, I developed this SAO development form, which I have on the next slide. It's kind of chopped weird, but I can include it when I email this presentation to everyone. But it's really just, it's designed for, you know, a group of people in their specific area just to sit down and answer some questions to help them decide what their SAOs are going to be. And I see a typo, but we'll fix that before I send it off. So, just again, asking them to sit down and write down. And I think that that little thing goes a long way, to just write down what makes your program special, what makes you excited to work in your area, right? What do you offer to students that nobody else can do? What is unique to you? What do students need from your specific area, right? We have areas that help students buy books, right? Helps them with their financial aid. We have, I think of like CalWorks, right? They do so much to support students, and they have really, really well-defined things that they're doing that support students to help them out. What are things you want to highlight? What are the skills or the knowledge or the application that you want students to walk out of your office with? Again, I think like workshops. I know at EOPS, and it used to be called DSPS. We call it Student Accessibility Services now. SAS, that's been a really fun renaming process over here. But getting, they have a lot of workshops that they have for their students. And it's like, getting them to measure, what are you wanting students to walk out with? So really, especially if they're just starting off, I just, a couple is good. And then that's where that assessment cycle comes in. You can write a couple of service area outcomes, give it a year, give it a semester. Is that enough? Do you need to add more? What are the gaps that you're seeing? So this is really meant to be that first step. Once they're written down, I also want them to stop and think about, how are you going to assess these, right? Because that should be a piece that is kind of built into the structure, that understanding of, this isn't just a sentence that we write down that gets stored on a website somewhere, but that assessment piece is really important. As we're assessing it, how are we going to collect that data? Are we going to do surveys after every workshop or event? Is this something we send out campus-wide? Are we sending too many surveys to students campus-wide? Like those are things that they need to think about. And then how often are you going to do this? Is it better for your program to do it once a year? Are you an every semester kind of person? Is this every couple of years? But writing down with some sort of thought process, right? So that they can come back to it at this closing the loop end of the cycle and go, what was I thinking? We should be doing it this way instead, right? I've been doing this for a whole year. I should make these changes. So it kind of ties into, what kind of questions do you want? What kind of data do you want? I kind of use that worksheet to split those in the middle, but really having them sit and talk about this, because I really believe that a lot of these areas with service area outcomes, even if they don't have formalized statements written down, they're doing all this work, right? You're in student life and you're trying to make sure, how many students are even coming to our events, right? How many clubs do we have? Are those clubs even meeting? Like they have an idea of what is important to them in their area, and they have an idea of the data that they want to pull out of those areas. Honestly, a lot of times it's just a matter of getting it written down in a sentence form and in that kind of measurable format. So I kind of ended there. So I ended it here with you too, but I really want to just leave them with a lot to chew on, a lot to think about. And then I'm happy to come back. I'm happy to go, sit with them, look at those service area outcomes that they wrote. Okay, have you thought about wording it this way? Our process, again, we're in a weird, like, it's been a long development stage. I feel like we've been at step one for a little while, but that's okay, because I'd rather everyone have a really solid footing on step one than have people, way down the road who are, really established and leave all these people behind. So I'm okay with everyone being in the same kind of early stage, and then we'll all move to step two together. So that's where we are. I will.
Thank you, Bethany. And we are close on time, so I'm going to let questions be held until the end for you, or if you want to pop your email in the chat. So we are going to move right along. We've got two amazing faculty from Oakton Community College that are here to talk to us about assessment, both heavily involved in the process in their colleges. So I'm going to let you guys decide who's going first, and go ahead and take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Amanda. This is Kanchana Mendez. Like Amanda said, I am in the biology department. I'm a professor and chair of the bio department here at Oakton. Me and my colleague Raga, who is the chair of Computer Information Systems. We'll be tag teaming on our presentation, so we're kind of going to go back and forth on this. Raga is handling the slides. And so we are actually representing the OCTIN's Program for Assessment and Learning, which we refer to as OPAL. So we're very excited to represent the OPAL team, and thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to speak out here. So here's what, this is just an outline of what we're going to present today. We will start with a little bit of a background about OCTIN, and then our strategic plan to infuse equity into the assessment process, and then provide you with several examples of how courses and programs are closed. We close the loop based on data. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. Oakton Community College, it's a public community college. We have two campuses in Des Plaines, Illinois and Skokie, Illinois. So we're in the Chicago area. It was established in 1969 in Morton Grove, Illinois, which was just down the road from here. And then it moved to its current location. We sit on about 147 acres of a forest preserve near the Des Plaines River. So we were having this conversation at the beginning of the session. We're in beautiful full color glory right now. We serve about 7,433 students. And if you look at the student demographic, 65% of them are under the age of 24 and about 35% are over the age of 25. Continuing on with demographics, we have a very diverse student population. We are an Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institution. And we have also been designated as a leader college from the Achieving the Dream network. Majority of our students are part-time, as you can see in that figure, and about 54% are female.
Thank you, Kanchana. I'm not going to talk about the picture on the right-hand side. I'll leave it for a little bit, but I would like to talk about equity and our strategic plan at Oakton Community College. So basically, as you can see, our strategic plan is strengthening students' Oakton experience, enhancing workforce readiness and community engagement, and then advancing racial equity. And all of those really are connected via justice and equity. So after we have shared a little bit about the diverse body of students we have, the goal really is to ensure that all Oakton's diverse student populations are given the opportunity to be successful in their classes. And so the challenge that everyone is talking about here is that how do we learn about student success or challenges, right? Assessment is the answer, and reassessment. So what happens when we assess? We get data. And I think we're going to point out a new culture that we're adapting at Oakton that is disaggregating data. So when we disaggregate our data, that is an outcome of our assessments that helps us really to tremendously identify the equity gaps that our very diverse body of students are having, and then try to work on closing those different gaps. So as you can see, here is the student learning outcome assessment is all rooted in the Oakton mission, vision, and values. The Oakton program for assessment and learning, we call it OPAL, actually assesses different learning outcomes, including general education outcome, program level, and that happens for career and technical education, CTE, and also student affairs. Course level, that takes care of transfer and career and technical education courses. Actually, for career and technical education, we actually assess both the course and the program. So here is Octane experience. And this is something that we've been just putting everywhere. I have it in my office, just to remind myself. So I have been going to Octane. This is my 20th year. So I'm very familiar with everything, right? I know where to, well, I quite know where to find my way. I was lost a couple of times today, so maybe. But my point is that it's important to put ourselves in the shoes of new students and what they're dealing with. So the Octane experience is entering the college successfully. We all know early engagement and how, when this does not happen, they just leave, right? They don't feel like they're included. It's not a place for them. They're not respected. They don't feel like they're part of it. Navigating the college, growing academically and socially, and then transitioning to the next step. So we really want to ensure that equity is rooted at every pillar of the Octane experience. How do we do this? By assessing in every level. So as you can see, the arrow here indicates that general education assessment and student affairs get assessed at every step of the way. In step 3, growing academically and socially, transfer and CTE courses and CTE programs as well get assessed. And then in the last pillar, CTE programs get assessed, career and transfer, career and technical education. So an example of transfer would be biology, English. Career and technical education would be computer information systems, air conditioning, different things like that. So we have goals, and we are trying to find out how can we achieve our goals. So basically, we are working on professional development for our assessment team members. We've also read the book From Equity Talk to Equity Walk. We reflected on ideas that we could implement at our own environment at Octane. We are intentionally participating in different professional development, and this is really ongoing. I personally believe that we can never sit down and say, here you are, we got it, we got this. We're done. We do not need any more professional development. We intentionally involve our assessment team members and also involve the whole college body in those professional development. Identifying and sharing methods to set meaningful equity-minded benchmarks. This is ongoing. Like, how do you make sure that your benchmark is equity-minded, as keeping in mind the different populations of students we have? So we started adding equity prompts to our assessment plan forms. And usually when we introduce something new like that, our team members were like, because like we know that faculty are going to be like, and honestly, and I included this in our bio, that I am very inspired, and I got to learn so much from the different faculty that we have, and how they are implementing or how they are answering those questions to the equity prompts in the assessment. They give me ideas. I also wanted to mention that our team has representation from all divisions, all disciplines, pretty much. And then we have student affairs, we have administrators, and also we do have employees. So our goal, honestly, is that we want to shift the assessment results reporting from aggregated to disaggregated. So we wanted to share that actually 30% of our departments or programs, they did commit that they will segregate data by race and ethnicity. And when I say they will, they write their plans, future plans this year, and that's what they did commit in the plans. Now they submit their plans next academic year. So we will see all the results of all of this next year, but we do have the commitment in the plans. Now, 50% of those departments that will disaggregate, they did say that they will identify at least one action item in response to assessment data that will address race, ethnicity, equity gaps. So I'm sorry, I have a lot of stuff on my screen, so I have to use another screen to read the title. So the equity frame, infusing the equity frame work and assessment. So you can see right here, we have an example of prompts that you would see in an academic affairs assessment plan. For example, in methods of assessment, we would be looking at questions like, how did you use equity lens when developing methods of assessment? How will results be disaggregated, right? When looking at a prompt that measures success, are we looking to see how an equity lens was used when establishing the benchmark, which a lot of times is set without an equity focus? We do acknowledge that assessment is not everyone's piece of cake, right? That is why we try to show the outcome of doing assessments. It would only benefit each and every program and department. And then it's a learning process. It's a learning process. We learn from each other. So again, we're learning to really have that equity focus when setting benchmarks. Based on the data that was collected from the assessment, what kind of action plans do we need to develop? Specifically, what action plans could respond to equity gaps in the results? Here you can see the equity framework and assessment. And again, this is, we're very excited about this. Your college might be somewhere higher or in a different place, but we are excited about that. In spring 2021, we had 7 out of our 40 CTE, career and technical education departments. They did disaggregate data. Now, in spring 2022, this number really rose to 26 out of our 40 departments. So that is a big jump from 17.5% to 65%. Now, honestly, when I looked at those, I'm like, oh, how can we do that? I think people are looking for change, and they see the need to disaggregate and make those action plans. For transfer, we moved from 9% that were disaggregating data to 62% that are disaggregating data. So moving to the title of this session, closing the loop, right? So I have a wonderful example here from a colleague of mine, and she's also her department, Computer Applications for Business. It's under Computer Informations and Technology and Information Systems. So she actually was, and it's amazing. I think she did teach me that practice. So what she does, and again, this is really something that I see very valuable in technology. She intentionally wants to assess, all the courses at every period of time. So she does have a schedule. So she was assessing keyboarding. And then the keyboarding description was saying that students will develop a minimum speed of 20 words per minute with accuracy by using appropriate drills and timed writings. Now, she did her assessment and she found out that 100% of students have, or 97% of students are actually doing 70 words per minute. Now that was like, whoa, that doesn't look right. So then that caused her to sit back and reassess that learning objective. So probably the old learning objective of 20 words, that was like maybe when people were using typewriters or things like that, or maybe the keyboards were different. So she actually, that did lead her to an action item of actually making a curricular change, and she did change that learning objective from 20 to 40 words per minute. Okay. Now, also in her same coordinator, in her PowerPoint course, she found out that the assessment results are much higher than the benchmark, and that raised like an awareness that probably at this day and time people have a certain like they pre-understanding of the software before they come to class. So that led her also to change from a requirement prerequisite to a recommended prerequisite. And that was inspiring because it is actually an action plan that took place and, you know, curricular change and also this course description change. The next example that I'm going to talk about, it is in my own department, computer information systems. So we look at data and we actually do data. We do have we do databases, and nowadays we do data analytics. So we are collecting data and trying to disaggregate by race, ethnicity, age, gender, and mode of instruction. I'm telling you that mode of instruction really did not make a big difference in our courses, so I'm not going to talk much about it, but we learned that it does for other disciplines. We found out when we disaggregated data, success data based by race, and that's in one of our very high demand certificates. So you can see here right away that what is the majority, what is the highest race, and what is the lowest race. Okay, so we'll just remember that, and then we'll come to recollect all of this. So this is disaggregation by race. Right here is disaggregation by age. So, wow, so the biggest chunk here is that non-traditional students, right? Adult students, we have been focusing on this in our college, but I see a huge value of, you know, maybe making that slice for traditional students bigger, okay? I'm happy with my adult students. I'm going to address them, but I'm also in need to address those traditional students. I'm not very happy of this small slice, okay? I'm actually addressing all different other categories in way or another, but I'm just going to focus on those two categories here. Now, in general, I did take more than one certificate, and looking disaggregation by gender. So the female is the blue, those who identify as females, and those are identify as males are green. And you can see that the green is much higher all the way, right? So again, it seems like that's another equity gap that we need to look at. So right here, this takes us to, you know, what did we learn about that actually from all of our data that most of our completers are white males, right? And then meanwhile, the lowest number of completers were Black and then Hispanic students. This has been historically the case, right? In efforts to close those gaps, we work on different directions. We talk about this with our faculty, and then we try to take action items. So the first action item I'm going to talk about based off this data is actually trying to work on increasing those numbers for our traditional students. So we make visits to high schools, and it's amazing because like every time we go, we just are very inspired. So here are three of our amazing faculty visiting a Maine Township high school district, and that was a post-secondary expo. It was attended by students and parents, and it was very, very interesting and rewarding. They said that they could not, like, they took this picture before the start. They did not have a minute after that. They had a big flow. So we're trying to market our associate degrees, our certificates. Might be a way for them to check to see if they like that or not before they commit to, you know, a four-year college. Or there is a lot of ideas that we run by them. And also we're addressing race and gender right here. So STEM is for everyone, right? And we, you know, we just show them examples, and by really showing our diverse faculty. Action plans where that the department's instructors would be, you know, part of what we call the persistence project, in which faculty meet with students one-on-one, and they try to, you know, talk to them one-on-one on, you know, different challenges, different, you know, we just learned that in Learning Day, by asking them if they're smart or not, but what they're smart at, right? And try to, you know, take that into, direct them in the classroom. So those data did show us that persistence project implementers, faculty who implemented persistence projects, ended up having much success rate than those who did not. I'm sorry, I did not bring this data, but we do have it. One of the other action items that I did talk about is actually developing different brochures, and they're not the best. I had like 24 hours to develop them, and I just showed them to our marketing folks. So the first one to the left is the one that we developed for high school. We were trying to convince them to take a free class, first class is free at a community college, get a taste of technology, you know, and in the summer, and it is going to be one less class for your parents to pay for. Remember, a lot of those events have parents, and this gets parents right away. The middle brochure features actually my mother-in-law, who is an 82-year-old architecture. I did have an agreement that I would take her picture. She did not want to share her name in writing. She said, you can talk about it, but not in writing. So she is an architect. She always complains about how those young people don't know how to do MicroStation or AutoCAD like it should be done. And then one time I asked her, how did you learn all that? She's like, I've been going to Austin since 1970. So she takes classes as needed. And I really feel like that the statement here that we put, which is actually taken from our website that our IT department has recreated, is whether you're a veteran information technology professional trying to learn new skills or relatively new to the field, our CIS courses will take you to the next level. So she's an example of that. The third one is just our regular brochure. It features, actually, this is a picture that I bought from Shutterstock, but it does feature really our students actually do, you know, it is a familiar picture. So moving to the adult learners, we're happy that they are coming to us. They're realizing that they do need those career and technical education certificates. We want more of that. We want to encourage them to come. And a couple of wonderful ideas was that try to put some, because like I put those brochures in different social places and you know, religious places. So somebody suggested that we could put and include a statement in their own language, right? So just to make them feel they're welcomed. So what do we do to encourage adult learners? That is again an action item. Even though we were happy with what we have, we can always post more, right? So curricular changes, that's the non-native speaker in me, and course offerings to better suit them. What does that mean? So So we're actually now experimenting with synchronous online evening classes, and those seems to attract a lot of people. Development of marketing materials, I just went through those. Now we'll pass it to Kanchana.
Here we go. So I will now be presenting some more examples of assessments that we have done. Sometimes we have assessments where students reach their benchmarks. And so here's an example of such a plan. The Health Information Technology Billing and Coding Certificate is one such example. So the first block shows you the learning outcome that's specific to the program. And it's set with, so that students in each category of age will earn 82% or higher in that learning outcome. When we disaggregate data by age, we find that there are no students in the 17 to 21-year-old category, which basically means that we're dealing mostly with adult students here. And then the other part of the data showed that all the students across all the other age categories met that benchmark. And so this is just one of the few examples of benchmarks being met, in which case the certificate and the learning outcomes will change the next cycle, and they will just look at a new learning outcome to assess. In terms of transfer plans, so here is one that we received from English 102, which is a Composition 2 class. The block on the left outlines two learning outcomes that are being assessed. One is for documenting, and the second is for incorporating citations. The block on the right sets the benchmark that 75% of those students assessed will be proficient or have mastery in both of these categories as defined by a rubric. And so here's some of the data that we got from this assessment. So if you look at these graphs, if you look at that top line right there, that's at 45%, right? The idea was for the students to reach proficient or mastery category, and it was going to be 75% of students. So basically, the benchmark was not met across both categories, either documenting sources or incorporating sources. As a result, for closing the loop, the faculty who were assessing English 102 came up with a few ideas. And here are some examples of what they came up with. All of these ideas were based off of departmental discussions. So the first one was to post a faculty-generated how to use Noodles tool document. And D2L is our LMS. So they were going to post this in the LMS so students would have access to this resource. Collaborating with the library to begin citation instruction in the class that was a prerequisite to this class. So they would start earlier in the process to work with citations. Generating materials through OERs so that students would have access to more resources to achieve these LOs. So what they did was they incorporated some of these action items this past year, and they have reassessed their LOs, and we are currently reviewing their resubmitted plans with these action items that we used. The next example I have for you is of another transfer plan in a completely different department, which is my department, biology. So this was an assessment that was done for anatomy and physiology. Again, the learning outcomes are identified on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the benchmark. And the benchmark was set so that 75% of the students would earn a 70% or higher in two things. Number one, we are a cadaver-based anatomy and physiology program. So the first part would be identifying specific muscles. And then the second part would be applying that knowledge of their identification. So we were, again, assessing two things. The data was disaggregated by race. And basically, oh, I'm sorry, this is the bio data. I keep getting confused. This data is an example of looking at information beyond student characteristics. So in this case, we looked at course characteristics to help inform student learning outcome assessments and gaps. We disaggregated data based on time of classes that were being offered, based on modality of teaching, so whether it was face-to-face, and at that time it was just hybrid classes. There were no fully online classes because this was a cadaver-based assay. And then we also disaggregated based on the availability of lab assistance, which is basically a student peer tutoring system we have here at the college, which we developed. And so students who have taken the course in the prior semesters come in and help out students in the future semesters as tutors. And what we found was that across the board, if we could go back to the previous slide, thank you. Across the board, we didn't see very many categories where we saw 75% being achieved by these students. And so we can go on to the next slide, Durga. Thank you. And so we came up with a couple of closing the loop and action items. And this was to develop a set of lab practical questions that would allow students to review muscles. We revised the lab manual to include a lot more pictures of cadavers and have review questions on those. We developed Kahoot quizzes and D2L quizzes, so LMS-based quizzes, where again, the student would have a lot more access to reviewing material. We added a pedagogical best practices sharing session during our faculty orientation week. And then we provided more sections with lab assistants because it seemed like lab assistants were definitely helping students achieve their learning outcome. Now, we did not talk a lot about, so everything we've talked about so far has been in the academic affairs side of things, right? We talked about transfer programs and career and technical education programs. This is not to say that we do not do student affairs assessment. It was wonderful to hear a lot of you speak about student affairs assessment, and I did take some notes down to pass it along to my colleagues in the student affairs division. But we do have a separate team of student affairs assessment. And they also included several equity prompts into their assessment. And here are some examples of the kinds of questions they asked. Finally, the result that they got, the data that they got back showed them that a majority of their student affairs program areas that were doing assessment were creating equitable assessment practices when creating their assessment plans. And they have done a lot of good work, and some of their work is currently is going to be published. It's in a book. They wrote a chapter in this book that I have a picture of up here, and it is currently under publication. So based on all of the data we've got across all of our courses and program assessments, to be more transparent about the connection between student learning outcomes, assessment actions to resource requisition and reallocation, the FY24 budget cycle will allow faculty, staff, and administrators the ability to use SLO assessment results and actions as evidence or rationale to support capital equipment and equity budget requests, and for any increases in department or division budgets. So we're kind of encouraging everybody to use this equity focus and get the data to help us. Again, it's been a real pleasure presenting some of this work to you. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Excellent work. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very comprehensive overview indeed. Kanchana, the very last part, the very last slide that I saw right before the closing.
Yeah.
Would you please elaborate a little bit about the process, how the resources are allocated within the departments? Because your discussion about the data was very extensive. I would like to see how it works out in real life linking the data to resources. That would be right.
Okay.
That's
So
the slide.
actually, Raga, if you wouldn't mind going back to the bio slides. I didn't spend a lot of time explaining it, but if you look at the one where we say disaggregated data based on lab assistant availability, right? If you look at the red bars are the sections that had a lab assistant available to them, whereas the blue bars are ones that did not. So even though the benchmark wasn't reached in some of these categories, there definitely was a difference in student learning outcomes being achieved with a lab assistant than without. These lab assistants are paid, and so they have a budget that is allocated for them, right? So this was a reason to expand that budget so that we could go in and tell the dean that this was a program that was equitable because it was allowing people who weren't able to grasp the knowledge within a lab situation to be able to come outside of that time. And so it would be more time spent by the lab assistants. And so they could be paid for that extra amount of time. So that's just one example of the kinds. So it goes basically from the course level up towards administration. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
It's basically using the data we have to request for budget increases.
That's right. And again, I sent a note in the chat. It really is encouraging that there's just this increase of again, the importance of paying attention to student learning, looking at the data to request resources. I think that's fantastic summary of your effort here. So again, thank you so much for the presentation. I do have one question for Bethany, if she's still there. There's a couple of people who sent me messages. Bethany, could I please ask you, there was one part of your presentation that really struck me as very, very enlightening, and that had to do with the uniqueness of the department, right? When the sort of like, motivational activity, right? When you read a book to kids about fishing, you bring a fishing rod to the classroom, kind of a thing. And this is like, hey, what's unique about your department? And then at the end, the very last slide of your presentation was a list of questions, right? Which again, I think makes us realize the importance of reflection of what it is that we're actually doing. Could you please comment on these two? How does it play out in your department meetings, or who does it? How does it actually work in everyday life?
So this is me visiting specific areas. So I always make myself available. I get a small reassigned time or a reassigned time to in this role, and so I just put it out there and I say, hey, I am happy to visit your area. I'm happy to help you write these SAOs. And that's honestly where it kind of grew out of. Was I had a division dean who oversaw, she's over the library area, she's over some of the tutoring areas, but also we have a middle college, high school, and like dual enrollment. So she has a lot of it's kind of a mixed bag over there. So she has a lot of things that are instructional, but also have these student services outcomes, because we consider tutoring and library instructional spaces as well. And so I was sitting there and just going, this is a lot to like rein into just one presentation, right? How do we bring all these different areas and get them to think and create a presentation that fits kind of this very large but diverse division. And so that's kind of where it grew out of. And it was a virtual, this one originated virtually. I've done it a couple times in person now, but I really just had people sitting together in their own specified area. So for this first one, we were on Zoom, so I put them in breakout rooms with the librarian or the library employees were in one space, the tutoring were in another space, and let them kind of answer those questions together. I didn't do it as much at the beginning. I did it towards the end. So I kind of had them write out for themselves what makes your area special to you at the beginning. And then we went through the whole thing. And then at the end, I let them get together and answer some of those questions as a group, if that makes any sense. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it absolutely does. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, again, that's what we are here to discuss and to listen to, right? What are those tangible? What are those hands-on solutions for us to ease the communication, to inform the discussion, to really make everyone engaged? And that's why, again, the asking of the questions and really asking people, hey, guess what? Your job matters, you know? Why do you think, what is it that you think you're doing for the benefit of our students? I think that's very enlightening. Yeah,
and I really wanted to pose it. I've said this in a couple other ones, but I really try to come from a place of, I don't know your area as well as you do. I think I've said it with disciplines, right? I can speak to math expertise because that's my area. I do math, but anyone else, I don't know your area as well as you do. So it shouldn't be my voice saying, well, this is what's important in your area. It should be your voice saying, this is what matters the most to me. This is what matters the most for our students that we come in contact with all the time. So I try to look for opportunities to allow that buy-in, right? Because I think that makes it go a lot more further than anytime I'm coming in and saying, you must do a certain thing. But if you kind of flip it, and I think that's like my math teacher side coming through, right? If I can make you enjoy it and own it a little bit more than me just standing up here and going, this is very important and let me tell you why, it goes further, and it's more inherited, right? You own it. And so that's always my intent. I don't get it right all the time, but that's my intent. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, again, very, very inspirational, Bethany. Kanchana, if I could please go back to you for just a moment, if you don't mind. Would you please comment about your situation in terms of the discussions that you have about the data? How do departments react to it? Because, you know, as you probably have observed, faculty are not always very comfortable discussing data. That you know, there's quite a bit of a challenge, and there is still questions whether that's relevant. We know what we are doing, kind of a thing in the classroom. How do you approach this on your campus, maybe even in your department?
So it does help being part of STEM, because with STEM, people do like data. So that certainly does help quite a bit. Having said that, we do have faculty who are not happy looking at numbers, but they're perfectly happy somebody else looking at the numbers and converting it to a visual where they can discuss it. I have to say that once we have the visual, it gets to be a very collaborative environment. So again, that might be the STEM aspect of it, just because the data speaks. And so for the most part, we have had people who are very collaborative once we have that data. And I totally agree with Bethany. There are parts where I would not interfere or say anything about a department which I know nothing about. For example, I mean, I'll just use my colleague, Raga. I know nothing about computers. So if there was data thrown at me with computer information systems, I would not know what to do with it. So numbers do talk, but then there are those nuances within the numbers that we know nothing about. So I think it's been a pretty collegial environment where every department has department meetings. So usually what happens is we run our cycles so that you run your assessment in spring. The assessment coordinators do the data analysis over the summer. And then the first week of the fall semester is orientation week, where we present our data and the analysis of the previous spring. And that's where we come up with action items, closing the loop, things like that.
Right.
And so it's usually the entire department that takes part in it.
Excellent, perfect. Thank you so much. Anybody else out there in the audience? Any questions, comments? And thank you again for sharing of your resources here. Yes, Marta, please.
Yes, I have a question. I work for student services in Merritt College, so I saw someone from Chabot. It's the Bay Area in California. I help a lot of programs within student services, and my specific question is, how are your colleges helping these programs collect data? Because since COVID, that has been a big problem. I'm gonna say, for example, our CalWorks program had specific questions. They had some surveys, right? And one of the services they provide within CalWorks is counseling. So they wanted to find out, have you been able, through the services our program provides, have you been able to determine a major, a degree level? Are you clear how long is it going to take for you to finish this process and graduate? And they send out surveys, but we get less and less and less students answering. And they come up with, I'm going to give you, you know, a $25 supermarket card to try to entice them to answer the survey. And we're having a problem not only with that program, but with most programs. How are you collecting data? What are strategies you're using to try to convince students or the population you're surveying to answer whatever survey or any way of collection, data collection method that you have?
I can jump in on that one if you like. So a couple of ways. So first, I will validate everything that you just said, that it is difficult. But sometimes we try to design the outcome in such a way that institutional data can help us to respond to the answer. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you want to know if the receipt of financial aid wants to help students make sure that they get their student education plan filled out faster. They think that if they have their financial, I mean, that was a bad example, but I was trying to come up with one where it is in our institutional data set whether or not students have the student educational plan. So if you can figure out a quantitative outcome that exists by student ID within the database, then you can have people gather student IDs of people who use their service and then see if there's a difference in outcome for people that have received the service versus not. In terms of surveys, one of them is to have like a really quick user survey that's like literally like 1 or 2 questions that with the receipt of, let's say a student receives some services, say, hey, can you fill out this 1 to 2 minute survey? So it's so quick that students might be able to do it. And then the final way we do it, and this is not an easy way, but our office runs a student satisfaction survey, the Office of Institutional Research, once every other year, which is a randomized sample campus-wide where we actually work with faculty members to have students do the survey in their classes. And the survey that has a variety of outcomes data, among which is some student service area data. But so that way we actually get a randomized and representative sample, but running that survey is like one of our huge, huge office endeavors.
Okay. Well, thank you. You gave me some ideas.
Well, thank you very much. Let me go ahead and stop the recording then.